warning. The following program is a satirical look at Indigenous news, politics, and current events. Bannock Tea is advised.
Anin, bonjour, tanse even. Welcome to the Laughing Drum. Television so profoundly Indigenous, even our horses wear Billy Jack hats, and they're not apologizing for it. We've got an exciting show, as they often are. The Red Power panel is here. They're standing by. But first, let's see what's been happening on the news. The race for the Assembly of First Nations is finally a race. A candidate has finally stepped forward and announced that they'll be challenging current National Chief Perry Bellegarde for the top job. Russ Diabo is a Kahnawake Mohawk, policy analyst and fixture at AFN meetings, who has also frequently appeared on APTN. And we look forward to poking fun at him in the coming weeks. But it's also exciting because we get to play this again. And moving on, a First Nations family is angry with the province of Alberta. Here's why.
This photo was posted with the caption, "This is how Alberta Health Services sends mail to my 15-year-old. A letter not addressed to any individual, but rather a status. The woman who posted it lives in central Edmonton. She declined through a friend to speak to CTV News as she feels the photo speaks for itself.
Yes, Alberta's health services sent a letter that was simply addressed to Status Indian. The Premier of Alberta has apologized in that province's legislature, and Alberta Health Services also apologized and said it has launched an investigation. But in the interest of fairness, I suggest any mail sent to Alberta Health Services be addressed to clueless assholes. In sports, a bald eagle made a surprise appearance at a Major League Baseball game. Check this out.
During the national anthem, an eagle landed on Seattle Mariners pitcher James Paxton. Here it is. Paxton didn't figure in the game's final decision, but he did manage to strike out 7 over 5 innings. So not sure if that was due to the Eagle.
How appropriate during the national anthem.
Yeah.
Whatever, dude. You've obviously never seen me just walking around. We've got to take a short break. When we come back, you'll feast your eyeballs on the Red Power panel. Don't you dare go away. Did you know we've got a podcast?
Don't lie.
It's true. Yes, now you can listen to The Laughing Drum on your smartphone, tablet, or even your Walkman stereo. Subscribe to The Laughing Drum podcast on iTunes and Google Play right now. Welcome back to The Laughing Drum, television so exquisitely Indigenous, our Res Dog has its own status card. My Red Power panel is here, and they are ready to tear truth a new one. They are the Sitting Bull of Elvis impersonators, Jerry the Big Bear Barrett.
Cheers.
A comic whose mustache is chief of its own reserve, Sasha Mark.
Hey.
And the sitting lip point champion for 18 years straight, Alyssa Kitson. Welcome to you all. All right, so the leadership race for the Assembly of First Nations is finally a leadership race, as Mohawk policy analyst Russ Diabo throws his headdress into the ring this past weekend. Now, we don't have to focus specifically on him because, frankly, a lot of people probably don't know who he is. But it is interesting that there's still just one challenger for the top job this close to the election in June. So, guys, do regular folks care what happens at the AFN? Jerry, let's start with you.
Well, what do you call it? What is your definition of regular folks?
What do you mean?
Yeah, you got me all excited now. How about
Indigenous
people or
non-Indigenous citizens?
Indigenous citizens.
Yes.
I've toured a lot up north and to remote communities and stuff, and a lot of people are more concerned about the quality of life in their community, the education, the weather, the price of food, and so they're more in touch with what's going on affecting them directly. What's happening in Ottawa? I don't think it's a real big day-to-day idea on their plate.
Would it change if the national chief could control the weather?
Yes, I'm sure. I think that would be a great thing.
Sasha, you're a woke Indigenous hipster.
Care about what?
Exactly. Show's over. That's all the time we got for it tonight. Well, okay. Speaking on behalf of your entire generation of young people, do young people care about the Assembly of First Nations?
I think a portion of them do, and a portion of them are still just saving Africa by retweeting or something, it's
which actually works.
Africa saved everybody. You don't have to do anything anymore.
Wakanda forever.
There we go.
Thank you, Black Panther. No, I think it's just it's not really a prevalent thing that's talked about amongst people outside of the Indigenous community, and I think it's you don't really hear about it in the other news outlets, or it's not mainstreaming in other news outlets, even though it's something that can definitely impact a lot of people. So yeah, it's just not a prevalent voice in the media right now, and a lot of people just don't know that it's out there.
Alyssa?
I think if you were related to people who are running for national chief, you'd care. Because nepotism, but also, it's very much like Jerry said, we have, a lot of our people are just living day to day, wondering am I going to die from this disease, or, will I get this health care covered? So a lot of people just don't give a shit, I feel.
Yeah.
I don't.
Plus, it's the chiefs that are voting, not the people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What could make this an interesting race? What would make?
If there were more candidates, I suspect. There's only two right now. Maybe three. Then we got something. I think we do need the voice of the youth out there. I think Regrettably, because of the Tim Fontaine and the Colton Bushy issues that have happened, we have seen a lot of youth leadership coming out of the grassroots and giving impassioned speeches about the rights and about the current state of government and self-government or lack thereof. So I think we're hearing a lot of new voices. So I think on the horizon there is hope for the AFN, but for the politics for our people. I think there is a new voice out there, and maybe this is a lull in between that happening.
Yeah.
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 I think a good contest to display who would be the best candidate would be like a dream catcher contest. They catch the dreams and never expose them. So
You will die here.
Yeah, you will die here. Yeah, we got you.
Alyssa, how can the AFN market themselves to be more appealing to people?
I think if they tackled the issues that we care about, like instead of making these decisions based on Ottawa, if they made these decisions based on what the people actually said. So Perry being pro-pipeline does not reflect the entire Indigenous population of Canada. And that's, that I think that's something that needs to change, is that he needs to, or whoever is, maybe she, what? Maybe she or he.
I didn't even know females could run for that. No, I'm just kidding.
4 of them so far. There have been 4 in the history books.
Would that make a difference, you think?
Yes, well,
Yeah. You think that would make a difference? If there was a female national chief?
I mean, look at any female who runs a household. Shit gets done. Look, that is why Canada is in the state that it's in, because it is just men after men after men running this country and making poor decisions. If it was a woman running this country, or if it was a woman who was national chief, there'd be a whole lot of changes, and they'd make sense. Just saying.
Okay, if you were elected national chief tomorrow, what would be your first action? What would be your first thing you would do?
I think I would give all of Ottawa a wedgie. I think that is something that needs to happen, just like right now.
Starting with who?
Starting with Trudeau. Crybaby Trudeau. I feel like I'll give you something to cry about.
That would be an
atomic wedgie.
An act of pure reconciliation.
Oh yes.
Jerry, if you were elected national chief tomorrow, what would be your first?
Well, I think I'd probably go on a little vacation down to Vegas.
Go
see some Elvis impersonators down in Vegas. Then maybe Broadway, over to Broadway. No, I think one of the things that I've witnessed, being from a radio background, is a lack of communication from our leaders in the First Nation community. So I often wondered why there wasn't a recorded message from Ottawa that's to be played back on the community radio stating what's going on, because people are listening to radio on First Nation communities. They like the fiddle tunes, they like the Geordie Jones, and then some sort of a news, some news. And so I think maybe a recorded message on a monthly basis, heavens to, Murgatroyd to be a weekly message, but a state of the First Nations on a monthly basis. Play it back so people know what's going on. Well, an unfiltered, censored words from our leaders.
Yeah, for people who don't know the Métis in Manitoba.
Wait a minute. And I forgot APTN is doing something similar to that too.
Yeah, but But we can only report so much. I mean, if the chief isn't speaking, then what are we reporting on? Sasha, you're elected national chief. What are you going to do?
The only pipelines that I'd be, administering and being okay with are peace pipelines.
We're going to put a wolf cry into
Please do.
All right, I think we got enough time for another topic. Let's shift gears here. A First Nations girl recently received a letter from Alberta's government that was simply addressed to Treaty Indian, sparking outrage.
This photo was posted with the caption, "This is how Alberta Health Services sends mail to my 15-year-old." A letter not addressed to any individual, but rather a status. The woman who posted it lives in central Edmonton. She declined through a friend to speak to CTV News as she feels the photo speaks for itself.
Alberta Health Services, which sent the letter, is saying it was a one-time error. So they've launched an investigation. Premier Notley has apologized. What are your first thoughts on this, Jerry? Let's start with you.
Well, it sounds like, what did I say earlier, a data entry error, a clerical error. First of all, the term Indian does not apply. Nowadays, Indigenous, please. And I think maybe it was just a clerical error, right? Yeah. I mean, we're all classified. We all have boxes that we have to check off on job applications and bank loans and whatever it is you're doing, you know, how you identify yourself is. And I think maybe that's what happened. Yeah.
Sasha?
For me, it's just like, oh, racist government, they did it again. You know? It's I definitely see where you're coming from, but also on the other hand too, it is something that's definitely inappropriate in a response to that, and you know, there needs to be an action to be taken because of that too. Yeah. So yeah, I find it pretty vulgar.
Alyssa, if that happened to you?
I don't, you know, it's funny you mentioned this because just last week in the mail I got a letter that was addressed in a very similar fashion, but it said Nietzsche extraordinaire. So like I wasn't
offended.
I was like, okay, like I have a name, but
I'll take that.
Sure, why not? You know, maybe we could start having like new status cards that instead of, you know, it would be like Nietzsche extraordinaire or, you know, Ojibwe Elvis. Like,
it's special status.
We should have, you know, we have this status that we all fall under, but then we should have like individualized statuses. I'm just, you know, we are separate people from each other. You know, we're not all a Susan a Gluekark song. Like, we're not all the same!
I thought we were. All right, guys, that's it for this part. We're going to take a short break, but when we come back, the Red Power panel is going to keep on going, doing what they do. Don't go away.
Did you know we got the social medias?
Man, don't lie.
It's true. Like the Laughing Drum on Facebook and follow us on Twitter right now.
All right, welcome back to the show. I'm here with the Red Power panel who came here to drink tea and kick ass, and they just finished their tea. Let's get back to it. This isn't really something that's in the news, but something I've been seeing on Twitter and Facebook, and it has to do with with non-Indigenous folk in Indigenous institutions. So, non-Indigenous professor teaching in a Indigenous university. And I'm seeing a lot of people talking about this, and it's created quite a debate online. So I wanted to take it to my Red Power panel and ask them what they think. Jerry, what are your first thoughts on non-Indigenous people working in Indigenous institutions?
Well, well, it's, dare I say, hire the best person qualified for the job. Why would you hire somebody that isn't as qualified and get a kind of a, not as an informed teacher or somebody who hasn't really, you know, gotten all their degrees and to teach when you could have someone who, you know, has all the credentials.
Yeah. Sasha?
Yeah, I think it's time. It's about time, everybody. Non-Indigenous teachers are going to be teaching Indigenous. I'm just joking. Please don't. Stop. No, I think it's really important. You know, there's not a lot of opportunities, and just like in universities in general for Indigenous profs. I can only name like all two of them right now, like that I've ever experienced, and it's you know, it's about opportunity, and I think just like also too, Indigenous culture is really based on like personal experience and storytelling, and somebody who's not involved in that culture will like not, I don't think can delve into that as well as somebody who can, so who's experienced it.
Alyssa?
You know, it's like you have chefs, and you have a chef who's been cooking all their life and who knows how to cook the food, and then you have a chef who just learned through academia how to cook a turkey. I feel like I'm going to be more inclined to learn from that chef who's been cooking all their lives. You know, as in what kind of education I want is from somebody who has the same lived experiences as what they're teaching, as opposed to somebody who's just read it in a book and, you know, can do the whole like solidarity, ally.
But are there exceptions to that? Is there somebody who's so woke, so lit that they could come into Indigenous institutions as maybe not an equal, but as a real ally?
I don't know. It happens at Coachella. Like, why not? Like, you know, everyone's wearing a headdress, and everyone is, you know, saying miigwech and has their spirit name.
Drumming circles?
Yeah.
Well, teachers, up north, I've seen so many teachers that aren't Indigenous, and I mean, they want to get their first job, and you know, as a teacher under their belt. That you go into any community, and there's lots of teachers up there who aren't brown, but you know, they're just as qualified to teach, and you know, the ABCs and all your book learning, all that. But then again, if you get, I mean, with any job, you've got the human rights code, you've got discrimination, you've got all kinds of you know, laws in place where it's job equality, employment equality.
It's kind of like if we replaced everybody here in this room with like non-Indigenous folks to do the laughing drum. Like, it doesn't matter if you're like lit, woke. It doesn't feel that way. And I think it's super important to like. If you're a person in that position, like, wouldn't you think you're like, oh, I'm taking this opportunity away from an Indigenous person? Or I think it's possible for, you know, non-Indigenous teachers to, you know, bring Indigenous culture into the classroom. I do think that's possible. I think that Indigenous culture should be more permeable. You know, in the States, they can bring guns to the classroom. Why can't we bring Indigenous culture in the classroom, you know? Like, it's a different,
There's a big difference between workplace equality and workplace equity. And I think that's something that we need to start taking seriously, especially in academia, where you have, you know, somebody coming in and being like, so this is how you lived a long time ago, which I have no, you know.
Well, I think I was in Sault Ste. Marie, and Sioux Lookout, and the airport manager said to me, he said, "Well, you're going north." He said, "Could you tell the students that we need more Indigenous pilots, more Indigenous people working in the field of aviation? We don't have enough representation, and I want to hire more." So the opportunities are there, and the vision is there, but these are some of the careers that perhaps Indigenous people aren't choosing as a career.
Well, my friends, that's all the time we have for this week. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts.
I was just getting going.
I know he was. He was getting angry, but we got to wrap it. Thanks very much to my Red Power panel for coming again this week. Thanks all of you for tuning in. We'll see you all here next Tuesday. You better come back.
Please.